Well, South Carolina's legislative session will be chock full of priorities, from budgets to banning cell phones in the classroom. Let's welcome back Krystel Reid Heath, Chief Strategist and CEO of Capital Consulting Strategies. Great to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for keeping your eye on something that is just so very broad and that really it takes a critical eye to kind of understand the workings of the state legislature. When we're talking about this new session, so from what I understand is this particular Congress has 2 years in which to pass bills. There's a lot on the docket so far. What are some of the top priorities that people are looking at?
Yes, so there are a number of legislative priorities, starting with the governor's budget. Tax reform will be a significant issue this year. So the proposal is to reduce the state income tax rate from 6.2% to 6%. Also, funding teacher salaries, increasing the minimum salary from $47,000 to $50,000 is a legislative priority of Governor McMaster. It's also a priority of the legislature, with legislation having already been introduced. There's also a priority of funding our education system. So legislation has been introduced to reform how that's funded. So the lawsuit Edison versus the state of South Carolina essentially said you could not use public dollars to fund private school legislation. So actually the very first day of the legislative session, they debated that bill and it advanced. It passed the committee. So very soon the Senate will be discussing how potentially public dollars could be used to fund private schools. There's lots of alternate proposals, but given the significance of the legislation and it touches pretty much every facet of society, sure, that is something that will certainly pass.
Well, also I know that school choice is something that is incredibly important to a lot of lawmakers, but also to families here in South Carolina. So is that in an effort to make school choice more available to families who wish to take part in it?
It is. Proponents of the legislation say basically what you've just said, that it's essential that families and children have options that best suit their needs. Opponents of the bill simply say that by taking money from the public education school system, it's weakening the public education school system. So interestingly enough, our federal constitution does not say anything specifically about education. The 10th Amendment says that any legislation or any laws that are not reserved to the federal government are relegated back to the state. Our state constitution specifically says in section 11 that we have a public education school system. It doesn't have specific regulations about what that means. So there's lots of interpretation, but essentially this is an issue that's important to families all across the state. And so because of that, it will pass this year. What the final bill will be remains to be seen, but something will happen with school choice this year.
Oh, very interesting. And not only with education, but also let's talk about transportation. Our roads are an absolute mess.
Yes.
An investment needs to be made. Are we going to see an improvement? Are we going to see bills passed that are going to jumpstart the road to recovering our roadways?
I hope so,
yeah.
But I think that we certainly will. So this year we had a $1.8 billion surplus to our economy in our budget. So we have about a $14 billion budget, and of which, in Governor McMaster's budget, he's proposed significant allocations to the Department of Transportation to hopefully fix some of these potholes.
Yeah, hopefully crumbling bridges. I mean, it is just an absolute mess. Do you foresee a bipartisan working across the aisle with one another? It's been very polarized in the past. Are we going to see maybe a new leaf being turned in this new session?
I hope so. Yeah. So essentially, the political landscape has shifted. It's a supermajority of Republicans, but I hope that for the sake of all South Carolinians, all families, that there can be a compromise and there could be a means by which both Democrats and Republicans can work together, because these are essential issues. So Senator Massey has outlined a number of legislative priorities that we've discussed, but I hope that Republicans and Democrats can work together to better our state.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious about the work that you do. So as a consultant and working with government, what is actually your role when it comes to having to follow all of this very intricate information that just keeps developing throughout the year after year?
Absolutely. I am a researcher and an analyst, so I take an objective analysis of the legislative and political landscape, and I help organizations develop their legislative strategy based upon best practice evidence information to make informed decisions.
Fascinating work. How do you get into work like this? Is it political science? Is it through that route, or?
Well, I had formal training. I have degrees in political science and social work, but for me, it's just really our government should work well. And I think it works best when we have objective information. So my role is to give an objective analysis so hopefully our leaders can make informed decisions. But really, it comes from a passion to really improve our state.
If you were to take a step back, would you say that our government is running efficiently or could be run more efficiently?
I think that we could always improve. I think there's some opportunities, and I really hope in this legislative session that there's a bipartisan effort to move the state forward.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, thank you so much for your insight on this. And I know we've got more topics to discuss, so we're going to do that as well at some point. But thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're back after this.